She laughed in my face. A sharp, rich, disgusted laugh, like I was some beggar dragging my past into her perfect little penthouse. Them dusty old things, she said, chin raised. You people need to let go of the past. I looked at the empty shelf where my mother's carved wood clock once sat. The hand-stitched quilt from my grandmother was gone. So was the silver cuff my father gave me after I got my first job. My name is Leonard Hayes. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever looked into your own child's eyes and realized someone else had humiliated your legacy through them, and they just stood there too broken to defend it? It was our 40-year family history she tossed in the trash like spoiled milk. I had given those heirlooms to my son Ethan and his new wife, Kayla, as an anniversary gift. Their first. We wrapped them carefully. I even printed out the stories behind each piece. We'd saved them not because they were valuable but because they were irreplaceable. But last night Ethan showed up at my door alone. No warning. No umbrella. Soaked. Trembling. Dad. He whispered, his voice cracked. She threw them out. Said they smelled like dust and poverty. He clutched a crumpled photo of my grandmother's necklace, taken just before it hit the dumpster. I stood silent for a long time. Then I asked, "Did you say anything?" He wiped his eyes. She said it was her house now. And if I didn't like it, I could leave too. That was when something broke inside me. Not because of Kayla's arrogance. I've seen people like her before. Shiny. Shallow. Raised by wolves in designer suits. No, what broke me was my son's silence. His small, broken voice. His hunched shoulders. So I drove over to their condo the next morning. Wore my best shirt. Not to fight. Not to beg. Just to ask. She opened the door sipping iced coffee, in one of those silk robes people wear when they think they've made it. I said, "Hi, Kayla. I just wanted to ask why." She took one slow look at me, smirked, then sipped again. Then she laughed. A short, cruel laugh that echoed in the hallway. "You people and your dusty little memories. Let go." And then she shut the door in my face. That was when I smiled. Not out of joy. Out of clarity. See, there's something you need to know about me. I don't shout. I don't threaten. I don't argue. But I remember. And I build things that last longer than silk robes and iced coffee. So while Kayla laughed at the past, I quietly began crafting a future she'd never see coming. And by the time it hit her, the only thing she'd be able to hold on to would be regret. I didn't go home that day. Instead, I drove to a storage unit about 30 minutes from their place. One they didn't know existed. Inside were 24 black-lidded boxes. Labeled. Dated. Wrapped in plastic. They held every photo album my mother ever made. Letters my father wrote me during his years in the steel mill. The scarf my wife wore during our first winter in Detroit. Even my son's first drawing of our old house. The one he made in preschool and I'd laminated the next day. You see, I come from a long line of people who didn't own much. But what we had, we kept. And what we kept, told stories. Ethan knew this. Hell, he was raised on it. But when he married Kayla, everything shifted. Suddenly, he was embarrassed of our traditions. Our photo walls. Our Sunday dinners with paper napkins. He started using words like minimalist, clean aesthetic, and upgrading. He said Kayla had taught him the difference between sentimental and essential. But that morning when I saw him weep over a missing quilt, I knew he hadn't forgotten. He'd just been surviving. I sat inside the storage unit for a long while, looking through those boxes. And as I did, one memory hit me like thunder. It was the day I gave him my father's watch. Ethan had just turned 21. We were sitting under the broken fan in our kitchen. He looked at it like it was Excalibur. "It still ticks," he said. I told him, because real timepieces don't follow trends. They keep going even when people forget what they're worth. I guess he forgot. Or maybe she made him forget. Either way, I realized something. I couldn't change Ethan's choices. But I could remind him. Remind him who he was. And if that meant shaking his life like an old snow globe and watching the flakes fly, so be it. The next week I did 3 things. First, I quietly transferred my family trust out of both their names and into an independent holding I'd created years ago. Second, I went to my lawyer and updated the will. Every heirloom, every asset, every locked-away treasure, now assigned to a different name. Not Ethan. Not Kayla. But someone else. You'll find out who soon. And third, I made a delivery. Not through FedEx. Not through UPS. I wore a plain hoodie, borrowed a delivery crate from my friend who runs a nonprofit, and walked right up to their building. No return address. No name. Just one label. Open me when you remember. Inside. A box filled with replicas. Not the originals, those were safe. But good enough copies. The quilt, the wooden clock, the cuff, the watch. Everything they threw away, returned to them. And at the bottom of the box, a simple envelope. Handwritten. You threw away what made you rich, for what makes you look rich. Let's see how long that lasts. They didn't know it yet. But I just started the clock. And time was about to run out. It started with a text. Dad, can we talk? 3 days after I dropped off the box. I didn't reply. Not out of pettiness, but precision. Timing matters in lessons like this. Sometimes silence teaches faster than words. The next day Ethan showed up again. No rain this time, but he stood there just as soaked, in confusion. Why'd you send that stuff back? He asked. I looked at him. Really looked. Not like a father seeing his son. Like a man seeing the cracks in another man's foundation. And I asked, did you open the envelope? He hesitated. Kayla burned it. I nodded slowly. Then you already have your answer. He left without another word. But 2 weeks later I got a dinner invitation. From Kayla. It was handwritten in that calligraphy-style script she used for Instagram party posts. Read. We're hosting an intimate dinner for family. Your presence would mean the world. It smelled like fake roses and expensive apology. But I knew what it really was. A peace offering dressed in pearls. Kayla had spent years building a public image. Dinner parties. Wine tastings. Clean countertops. She couldn't afford a scandal, especially not the kind whispered behind real estate deals and brunch tables. She'd found out something. Maybe Ethan told her I pulled the trust. Maybe she heard I changed the will. Maybe one of her friends spotted me lunching with someone who mattered. Either way, she was nervous. And nervous people invite the very ghosts they once laughed at. So I dressed in black. Not because I was mourning, but because power walks quietly when it's done pretending. Their condo had been redecorated. Soulless. Clean. Empty. They'd removed every trace of Ethan's childhood, and replaced it with white chairs and wine racks. But one thing caught my eye. On the far wall, tucked into the bookshelf, was the replica clock. Still ticking. Kayla greeted me with that wide smile. The one rich girls wear when they've Googled what respect looks like. Leonard, you look amazing. We were just saying how we should have had you over sooner. I nodded. You did. 5 years ago. I brought peach cobbler. You fed it to the dog. The smile froze. Just for a second. Dinner was a charade. Expensive wine. Small portions. She talked about gallery openings and furniture deals like she was selling me a version of herself I'd already rejected. But halfway through Ethan spoke up. Dad, I want to apologize. I should have said something that night. And for a brief moment I saw the boy I raised. Then Kayla cut in. And we'd love to reconnect. It's been a hard few weeks. I placed my fork down gently. Looked her straight in the eye. You want to reconnect, or recover? She blinked. Excuse me? I leaned in. Just a little. See, people don't invite the past to dinner unless the future's looking shaky. So tell me, which part of your empire is cracking? Silence. But her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her glass. They weren't ready for what I'd do next. Because while they were trying to fake peace, I was preparing to deliver the storm. A week after that awkward dinner, I sent Ethan a message. Just 3 words. Come home. Alone. He came. This time in old sneakers. No watch, no designer jacket. Just my son. I made coffee. Sat down across from him. Let him speak first. Kayla's been off, he said, rubbing his temples. She's worried about our accounts. The brokerage app locked her out. She says there's been movement in the holdings. Dad, did you? I raised a hand gently. Do you know what you signed when I handed you the heirlooms? He blinked. What? The card. The one you thought was just sentimental. It had a clause, tucked in the fold. It gave me legal leverage over the house deed I transferred into your name 2 years ago. He looked stunned. Wait, our condo? I nodded. It was never really yours. It was mine. I gave it to you symbolically, with trust. But trust, like property, can be revoked. He leaned back, whispering, Kayla doesn't know. I nodded slowly. She will, when the notice arrives tomorrow. See, after she laughed in my face, I pulled the tax records. I saw what she'd done. She'd quietly tried to list the condo under her shell company, planning to flip it. Maybe even leave Ethan behind. That was the moment I knew, she wasn't just arrogant, she was calculating. So I took steps. Legal, quiet, documented steps. I filed a reinstatement of ownership. Froze any sale actions. Initiated a title audit. And then I filed for formal eviction, not for Ethan but for unauthorized cohabitant Kayla D. Fields. He stared at me pale. She'll lose it. I looked him in the eye. Then maybe she'll understand what losing actually feels like. The next day the process server arrived during her brunch with friends. I heard about it through a neighbor, who texted me a photo of Kayla in her robe, yelling on the phone, eviction notice in hand, 3 half-eaten croissants on the patio table. She tried to call me. I didn't pick up. Instead I sent her an email. No words. Just a link to a cloud folder. Inside, photos of every heirloom she trashed. Next to each, a scanned appraisal. That wooden clock? $4,200. The quilt? Handmade, civil rights era textile, valued at $12,000. The cuff? Sterling, World War II commissioned, $7,800. The watch? Priceless. Total value, $34,000 and legacy she couldn't ever understand. And one last image at the bottom of the folder. A photo of Ethan, aged 5, holding the quilt. Smiling. Proud. Captioned, "You threw away treasure, Kayla. Now the world gets to see how cheap you are." She screamed. Literally. I heard she broke a lamp. But I wasn't done. Because I hadn't just targeted her home. I had quietly bought into her brand. The next wave of my plan would destroy her image from the inside. Kayla prided herself on being an influencer. Not the dancing on TikTok kind. The curated luxury lifestyle type. The one who posted sunlit shots of flat whites on marble countertops and motivational quotes about self-worth right next to pictures of $800 handbags. She'd built her online presence from the ground up. Thousands of followers, brand partnerships, promo codes. She loved to say, "Perception is power." So that's where I struck next. See, while she was busy mocking my dusty past, I did a little digging of my own. Turns out, her little fashion boutique wasn't actually owned by her. It was funded by Ethan's half of my trust. Worse, she'd used her business to funnel appearance fees she never reported. So I hired someone. Not to expose her. Not yet. Just to shadow her digital empire. A friend of mine, former cyber investigator. Silent. Meticulous. Brilliant. He gathered screenshots, matched timestamps, dug into cross-referenced photos. He traced every lie she told online about working from the ground up. Within 2 weeks, I had enough material to write a memoir on her fraud. But I wasn't writing a book. I was about to publish a reckoning. And the best part? I didn't post a single thing myself. Instead, I sent a beautifully curated anonymous dossier to 3 people. A journalist who ran a digital integrity blog, known for calling out fake influencers. A luxury skincare brand she was trying to land as a sponsor. Her old college roommate, now a mid-level exec at an ad agency she desperately wanted to impress. It took less than 48 hours. The blog ran a headline. Polished or pretend? The Curious Case of Kayla Fields. The article didn't outright accuse her, it simply asked questions. Showed timelines. Contradictions. Suggested discrepancies. But online questions spread like fire. Suddenly, people were combing through her posts, finding recycled photos, fake captions, inconsistencies. Her brand deals froze. A few quietly removed her from websites. One even requested back the gifted items. And then the cherry. Her boutique supplier emailed her an urgent audit request. She went silent online. Deleted 3 months of content. Changed her bio. But silence doesn't erase shame. Ethan called me. Voice shaking. What's happening to her? I answered calmly. She built her kingdom on glass. I just tapped the window. He didn't reply. But what she didn't know, was that there was still one more move to play. Because while she was trying to hold onto her crumbling image, I was preparing to reintroduce a name she tried to bury. And once I did, the last of her power would vanish. Just like the family she spat on. Kayla always hated Ethan's middle name. She once told him, loud enough for me to hear, "It sounds like someone who works in a garage, not a boardroom." He'd laughed nervously. That laugh I now recognized, the kind you give when someone slices your dignity in public, but you pretend it doesn't bleed. Hayes wasn't just a name. It was our name. My father, Elijah Hayes, wore it like armor. During the war. In the factories. On every union petition he ever signed. And I'd worn it too, while building our family's small legacy from a Detroit auto body shop to a consulting firm that helped black-owned businesses survive economic droughts. Kayla wanted that name buried under veneers and vases. But I wasn't going to let that happen. So I rebranded the trust. Quietly. Completely. Publicly. I renamed the family foundation, the Hayes Legacy Initiative. I reached out to a few media contacts from my nonprofit days. One ran a small column on unsung legacy builders. Another did an interview podcast. And within 2 weeks, our name, was in circulation. But here's the twist. I didn't include Ethan. Not as a beneficiary. Not as a partner. Not even in the photos. I chose someone else. Her name was Naomi Carter. 26. Single mom. Ethan's distant cousin. She had helped me during my wife's cancer treatments, quietly bringing food and cleaning our home when no one else remembered. She never asked for anything. So I gave her everything Kayla mocked. The heirlooms. The backing. The mentorship. The full weight of the Hayes name. I signed over partial ownership of the company to Naomi. Trained her for 6 months. She soaked it up like sunlight. Then I made it official. She would lead the public face of the Hayes Legacy Initiative. And the media loved it. From struggle to stewardship, how one woman revived a forgotten legacy. That article trended for 2 days. Ethan saw it. He texted me. Just 3 words. Why not me? And I replied. Because you watched her erase us and said nothing. He didn't text again. But Kayla? She showed up. In person. At my office. Tight dress. Big sunglasses. Red eyes. She walked in like she still had power. I don't know what game you're playing, she snapped. But if you think giving that girl everything will make you look noble, you're wrong. I stood. Come. Steady. This isn't about nobility. It's about restoration. I'm not giving Naomi anything. I'm giving back what you tried to erase. She scoffed. You think anyone cares about your dusty little legacy? I walked around the desk. Handed her a copy of the trust she was officially removed from. No, you don't care. But the world is watching now. And so is my son. She froze. Because in that moment, I think she realized she hadn't just lost money or influence or a fake brand. She'd lost the one thing she could never fake. Water. It was raining again. Like the day Ethan first showed up at my doorstep, wet and ashamed. Only this time he wasn't alone. They both came. Ethan and Kayla. She looked thinner. Dark sunglasses again. Dressed in muted beige like someone in mourning, but it wasn't grief on her face. It was calculation. Ethan stood behind her, not holding her hand, not speaking. Just standing. I didn't invite them in. I stood at the door just as they once made me stand. Kayla spoke first. We're not here to fight, she said. Her voice was soft, almost rehearsed. We just wanted to ask you to reconsider. For Ethan's sake. I looked at my son. He couldn't even meet my eyes. So I asked him plainly, is this what you want? He flinched. Dad. I just want peace. Things are falling apart. We're behind on everything. Brands have dropped her. Her boutique's being audited. We can't keep the condo. The trust. I cut him off. The trust was built on our family's name. She tried to destroy that. Kayla stepped forward. I made Ethan better. Polished. Presentable. You think that cousin of yours is better suited to represent your legacy? She can't even hold a sentence on camera. And that's when Ethan snapped. Stop it, Kayla. We both turned. He finally looked up. His voice was shaking but steady. I watched my father break his back for everything he gave us. I let you throw that away. I didn't stop you. I didn't even blink. And now I don't even recognize myself in the mirror. He turned to me. Dad, I didn't protect what mattered. I know that now. I saw it. The crack in him finally split wide. The real Ethan, the one I raised on stories, on struggle, on Sunday chores and legacy, was clawing his way back. Kayla's eyes widened. She tried to touch his arm. He pulled away. I stood by and let her treat you like trash. Like we were too good for what made us. But I'm done pretending. Kayla's voice cracked. Ethan. He faced her. Come, Cole. I want a divorce. The word hit the porch like a bomb. And for the first time, Kayla had nothing to say. She turned and walked away. No tantrum. No final insult. Just quiet, defeated footsteps down the stairs. Ethan stood there breathing hard. I opened the door. He stepped in. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just sat. Together. In silence. For the first time in years we didn't need words. Because something had shifted. Not just in him, but in the air between us. The boy I raised had been asleep inside a man who forgot who he was. But he was waking up now. And while Kayla walked away with empty hands, Ethan walked back into a legacy he finally understood. 3 months later the house was warm again. Not because of the thermostat or the fire in the grate, but because Ethan had started coming by on Sundays, First awkwardly, then freely. He brought groceries. Fixed the old shed out back. Sat on the porch with me like we used to. He still hadn't said much about Kayla. I didn't ask. Some ghosts deserve to stay unspoken. One day he came with a cardboard box. He placed it gently on the dining table. I found this while packing up the condo, he said. She never touched it. Inside was the replica quilt. The one I'd sent in that box labeled, "Open me when you remember." Still folded. And used, but intact. He lifted it with quiet hands and asked, "Can I keep the real one?" I didn't say yes. I just walked into the study. Opened the locked chest. Pulled it out. When I handed it to him, he pressed it to his chest like something sacred. "Thank you for not giving up on me," he whispered. And I said the only thing a father could. "Welcome back." 2 weeks later, we held the inaugural event for the Hayes Legacy Initiative. Naomi stood on stage in a deep blue dress, speaking with the calm, strong voice of someone who knew what it meant to come from struggle, and still stand tall. The mayor attended. So did 2 state senators. Journalists, teachers, mothers, young men and women who'd never heard the name Hayes before, but would remember it now. Ethan sat in the front row. Quiet. Proud. And when Naomi introduced me as the man who turned memory into a mission, I didn't look for applause. I looked at Ethan. And he nodded. What? That was enough. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low behind the city skyline, he and I stood beneath the old oak tree outside the venue. "I'm working with Naomi now," he said. "Helping build the small business outreach wing." I smiled. "About time you did something that makes you sweat." He laughed, really laughed, for the first time in a long time. And then he pulled something from his pocket. A watch. Not the replica. The real one. "I thought it was gone," he said softly. "But it was buried in a drawer. Wrapped in an old sock." He held it out to me. "You should keep it," he said. But I shook my head. "No, son. That was never mine to keep. Just mine to pass on." He strapped it on. It still ticked. Still alive. Still counting. And in that quiet moment, with the city lights blinking and the night breeze whispering through the trees, I realized something. Kayla had tried to erase where we came from. But she didn't realize, some roots run too deep. Some stories are carved into the bones. And some heirlooms aren't made of silver or cloth. They're made of forgiveness, of memory, of the courage to come home. So when people ask me now, was it worth it? I tell them this. She laughed at the past. But the past never laughed back. It simply waited to become the future.